But Lloyd, it has been a significant 48 hours for your old club, the Essendon Football Club. You were at the desk on Monday. Since then, yesterday, Adam Saad asked to be traded to arch rivals Carlton, and now today, I think probably less of a surprise, Joe Daniher wants to get to Brisbane.
Yeah, I think a massive concern for Essendon is that 12 months on, Sam, a lot of people thought that Fantasia and Daniher should have just let them go, but they kept them. 12 months on, nothing has changed. Both players wanted to leave the Essendon Football Club. I think the real stinging one was Adam Saad, because Adam Saad has been fourth in the best and fairest, third in the best and fairest and third in the best and fairest in his 3 years at the club. He was offered a 5-year deal, pretty much the same as he was at Carlton. They say similar money, could even have been less money at Carlton, yet he chose to leave for a club that is half a game ahead of them. Haven't won finals, haven't done anything more than Essendon, but again, he left the Suns chasing a dream, chasing fulfilment. He's joined a club who he thought he'd get that from, couldn't get it. So I think that's, rock bottom is the supplement scandal, but in terms of rock bottom as a football club, in terms of pure football, I think they have, I mean, it's not rock bottom yet because Fantasia will be the next one. It's only a matter of days before he says, I'm out next. So don't give me tonight, we'll talk from grabs. It's just about getting around Ben Rutten's game plan. This is purely a culture issue of players not being happy, not being content, not sure the direction of the club, not feeling like they're going to get any success there. So for such a proud club, this is one of the saddest days I think that I've ever been involved with.
So, culturally, Matthew's talked about the players. I mean, there seem to be spot fires breaking out everywhere at Essendon, membership, commercial issues as well at the football club, although not nearly as big as a player exodus. And you say that last year it seemed to be a big problem. What's worse this year is that Ben Rutten has had a year, really, as senior coach, and he doesn't seem to have won over the players at all. In fact, if anything, it's got worse.
That's right. He was the coach this year, so if there's been any doubt about that, Ben did coach. But look at this, 4 25-year-olds, and I throw McKenna into this. Connor McKenna left the club because he was unhappy in the environment. So he's a 25-year-old who was top 4 in the best and fairest, extremely good footballer, but it was probably just brushed off that he's an Irishman.
But they're getting some pushback, aren't they? I think you can go through your list, but Dan Richardson's coming. They are pushing back. Well, his statement is, we want committed players at the Essendon Football Club. That implies the people that leaving weren't as committed as one would expect. Do you think that's accurate?
I don't. I think that Saad has been extremely committed to that football club, but hasn't been content.
We'll hear from Dan Richardson shortly in what he had to say, as Ross was alluding to. But this is just as Adam Saad joined the Essendon Football Club, the end of 2017. Doesn't seem that long ago. This is what he had to say before his first game.
Just as soon as I spoke to Essendon, and I just felt at home straight away, and I guess I'm just really excited to be a part of such a great culture and such a great club, and yeah, just really excited with the list and what they're striving to do, what we're striving to do.
I mean, culture, Ross, you've talked about this before as a word that's bandied around maybe a little bit.
Well, culture is simply the way we do things on a daily basis. So at that time, he was happy with what they do on a daily basis.
Well, he was sold on something that they would do.
He was sold, yeah, but you always get sold the dream, don't you? So he bought it, but after really living it and being coached and trying to thrive in it, he said he's made a choice, I'm out, there's something better.
Ross, on your point though, I think the club has their heads in the sand if they want to shove this back on the players, because if they want to go down this track and believe you players don't want to play the role Ben asked you to, there'll be a player by the name of Zach Merritt who I believe will say in 12 months' time, I'm not that content either. So they've got to look far deeper.
They're going to take the feedback.
They do, have to, they have to listen.
I don't think, it's never all one way, but they need to say, we need to drill in and take feedback. How can we get better? I think there's a real opportunity for Essendon to reset, leave the drug saga behind, move on who doesn't want to be there, get talent in and commit and go forward. And Eddie's alluded to it a lot. Strong leadership's needed from the top down.
A couple of practical points. So Adrian Dodoro, who it seems will survive as list manager, again, made some pretty strong comments yesterday, didn't he, Sam, about what they would do in terms of trading Adam Saad?
Yeah, he said this, although we wish Adam all the best, he's not a free agent and therefore a suitable trade will need to be forthcoming. Clearly there's an expectation of compelling compensation.
So there's two sides to every story, and Tom Morris wrote some pretty interesting stuff yesterday from the Essendon point of view, that there was implied an element of selfishness from Adam, that he wasn't prepared to follow the game plan, that he wasn't prepared to do the team things. The club is saying to me that, going back to round 9, when Essendon was badly beaten by Brisbane on that night, the coach asked him to stand Charlie Cameron, seeing Cameron as the key to the Brisbane Football Club, as we know. I don't think Adam was happy about that. I think in front of the other players, Ross, he said he would rather play the game he normally plays, running on from the half-back line. I think Cameron ended up kicking 4 goals that night.
Hang on, Carrot, you're saying that someone at Essendon has told you that he refused to play on Cameron?
I'm not sure that he refused. He argued with the coach about it and said he wasn't happy to do so.
Sour grapes from Essendon, from a guy that's finished top 5 and they've been there 3 years in a row. They offered him a 5-year deal, so it's not as though they wanted him out.
It's interesting that they're putting out the bad comments about him now when, as you say, they made him a pretty generous offer.
And there's never, and I'll bring Eddie in here, Ed, there's never an easy breakup, is there? And it always gets a little bit nasty after a player leaves. But what's your thoughts? Where do you start when you're trying to reset as a football club, like I think Essendon need to do next year?
Well, I think what they need to do, I think that last point is exactly right, Matthew, and that is you do have to bite your tongue. Sometimes, even if you're right, you're wrong when you say these things. So Essendon probably need to just let it go now. These players are going to move on. They could have moved on last year. They're moving on this year. And we're going to, in a few minutes' time, go through some of the players they could pick up. It could be a quick turnaround for the Bombers, so it's not all bad news there. I'd like to put back to you guys, since Daniher has been the marquee player, when he got the big money, he's really struggled. And it's interesting that he's picked Brisbane to go to, where he'll be a player as opposed to the star player. And I wonder whether or not he actually dodged a bullet by maybe going up to Sydney and having to be the replacement for Buddy Franklin. So it's an interesting situation for him, who has had to carry a lot of injuries. He's carried the burden of his name as well as the expectation of his name. He's one of the best and fairest. He's an all-Australian, so we know he can play. But it just seems the last couple of years he just hasn't really wanted to either be there, or his body hasn't allowed him to play at his best. But I mean, I called him in the last game and I actually said he looked like he was 100 years old running around there at one stage there. So if you can get a good offer to go to Brisbane and start again, it's probably the best thing for him. But coming back to your point, Lloydie, they have to really decide who is in their club. They have to then say, right, okay, Paul Brasher's the president. These guys are going to be your football director. We've got the coach in place. We've got the CEO. We've got our commercial people in. This is what Essendon is going forward. This is what we stand for. Get in and make a mark in the community as well. And probably they are going to go down the road of regenerating and refreshing their entire list. And if they do, I'll go through the names in a few moments' time. But there's some good kids out there that they can really rebuild this club quickly.
Hey, Sam, can I just say on Paul Brasher, I think he's made a wonderful start, knowing, obviously, he's asking a lot of questions of a lot of people inside the club, outside the club.
He's shocked at what's happening. He's shocked at what he's seeing unfold.
And I think he's hearing a lot of things, and he's got to probably get to the bottom of, what's real, what's not. But he's best. I don't think he'll sit on his hands in terms of.
Which the last president.
He's been sitting on the board for the last 12 months. How could you possibly say he's shocked?
He's been sitting on the board before the start of the drug scandal. He's been on the board for a long time.
So how can you say shocked?
Well, I know.
Board members are last to hear it. How much do board members hear, though, in a sense?
Well, they
should.
There are now 3 football people on that board. I mean, Kevin Cheety's joined, Wellman and Simon Madden.
But aren't they only informed really by the head of football?
Can I jump in on that one, guys?
Eddie would know better than...
Can I jump in on that? The board members don't know the day-to-day stuff at all. They're a board of governance. They meet once a month, maybe.
Once a month. They get a report from the coach and the head of football.
The president the past president did exactly what Matthew said. I don't think he did much at all. I'm told he was barely cited at any of the president's meetings this year, Lindsay Tanner, and I reckon he did sit on his hands and leave everything to the CEO and didn't get nearly enough information, which is an indictment, really.
And Caro, your point's probably right, but what I'm saying here is that Essendon, we said this round 1. In fact, in one of the pre-season, it might have been the first night we're actually on air together at the start of the year, that Essendon had an interesting scenario where they had a caretaker president, a CEO who was being courted by the AFL at that stage. Their captain was going to be out for most of the year, as it turned out, Dyson Hepburn. I wouldn't underestimate just how much of an importance Dyson being out of that team has made to the Essendon Football Club. They had a caretaker coach. They had a caretaker list of leadership group. They had blokes going in and blokes going out. It was like the hokey pokey there for a while. And it's no wonder that they've had this year. And now Paul Brasher comes in. and they have to refresh. It's as simple as that. Essendon are a great club. They're one of the big clubs of the AFL, and the AFL needs them up and going. I think everyone now wants to draw a line under the supplement scandal and all that sort of situation, and they can start afresh. It usually takes a couple of generations after these major disasters. Look at Carlton, look at all these other clubs that have gone through those big upheavals to get themselves right. It took, the Tigers best part of 30 years to get themselves going again. They got 3 years into a 5-year plan for the best part of 30 years. But once they got themselves right, they became a force pretty quickly. And Essendon have got the wherewithal, and I think they've got the people starting to come into their place, and they've got the desire again to make it happen.
Ed, with respect, you're not the president of Essendon, you're the president of Collingwood. Enough of the...
Tell you what, he was doing a pretty good job, though, if he wanted to be.
Four 25-year-olds, 3 gone and a 4th potentially soon. Sam?
Yeah, look, and Lloyd said that Paul Brasher, one of his jobs will have to be to get to the bottom of what is right and what is wrong. And the word environment and the word culture has been questioned in the last few days with Essendon, and that was put to their head of football, Dan Richardson, tonight on radio.
But look, culturally, I think there's a shift taking place, and Ben's very strong on and very clear with his expectations with players. We need players that are fully committed to his vision and where we're taking the club. And if that means that we unsettle or ruffle a few feathers along the way because we're asking players to put the team first, then so be it. I don't think we should apologise to anyone, even our fans, if that's what we're doing. And that's where we want to get to, is build a team that wins premierships, and that's what we need to do.
So Daniel is completely invested, of course, in Ben Rutten, having brought him over from Richmond, along with Blake Caracella. I don't see how he can sort of say there are not real problems at the club. I'm surprised about that. He's clearly under the pump as well. It has to be under the pump. And things are not good at Essendon when one of their favourite sons makes comments like this, as Tim Watson did on radio this morning.
They've got other people in, obviously. Blake Caracella from Richmond and Dan Richardson arrived first, and then Ben Rutten arrived, and they said, OK, no, we're going to be more like Richmond the way they play, and then there wasn't enough evidence of that. That confuses players. If you sit there and you say, OK, this is the plan, this is what we're going to do, and then you see it change and it's not really sold properly to them, and they're thinking, OK, well, hang on a minute, where do I fit in all this?
But where's the faith to fix
I'm
that?
starting not to trust what they're saying to me. Everybody deserves a fair chance in this business, and I don't want Ben Rutten to be anything other than a successful coach at Essendon. The thing that worries me, though, is that he has now been there for 2 years and they haven't been able to establish a way of playing.
It was passionate and raw and honest from Tim Watson. So I guess one of the things being questioned is the coach and the handover with John Worsfold. Another thing that's being questioned is their list management. And I know that Adrian Dodoro has been publicly criticised several times in the last few years for the list that he's put together. But let's not forget, it wasn't that long ago that they had the first exodus of players that left because of the drug scandal. I would argue that this is almost the second wave of that. And this is the first wave. Look who they lost. Crameri went to another club, Paddy Ryder went to another club and then was All-Australian. Michael Hibberd did the same thing at Melbourne. They lose Melksham, who's still playing good football at Melbourne. They lose Carlisle, who would be playing in a semi-final this week. Daniher was All-Australian full forward. I think he was in the forward pocket that year. And then you can make a case, Ross, that Saad, McKenna and Fantasia all have the potential of being A-graders, or at least...
Well, quick, skillful outside, what every team's looking for.
Yeah, exactly right. So I can understand, and I'm not trying to defend Essendon's list management here, but they can only pick them. They can't control what happens after. And if the club isn't providing the right environment, and if players continue to leave, then I think that's on more than just list management.
I'm with you, Sam. And if you can get 3 picks in the next 15, and I know everyone's trying to sell it. I saw an article from Johnny Ralph. If they get 7 and they get 8 and you get 9, doesn't matter who comes in. If you cannot get the environment right, they'll fall by the wayside too. So that's the critical part.
I'm certainly not blaming Adrian Dodoro, Ed.
Well, Lloydie, one of the things is, the smart people in football thought this was going to take 10 years for the Bombers to get off the canvas after the supplement saga. But let's go through. You mentioned those players. I've spoken to a few of the top recruiters in AFL football, just to give Essendon fans a little bit of a taste of what could be. Now, as you said, they'll end up with picks 6, 7 and 8, which will go to 7, 8 and 9 because Jamara Ugle-Hagan will go to the Western Bulldogs. But this kid is Will Phillips of the Chargers. He's an outstanding midfielder, mad Collingwood supporter, but similar to Matt Rowell. Heath Chapman is a tall West Perth player, perfect, plays forward and back, and a really good player. And the next bloke we're going to show is Zach Reid. This is Heath Chapman still playing. And then we're going to show Zach Reid from Gippsland. He's 200 centimetres, a utility, back, forward, and is a beautiful kick of the football. And if they don't get those guys, there's a kid called Elijah Hollins from Murray who's 190 centimetres. He's coming off a knee, would have been a top 5 pick all day. He might still get through to Essendon. There's a kid called Oliver Henry from the Falcons, who's the brother of Geelong's Jack Henry. There's another kid, Tanner Bruin from the Falcons, who's a midfielder. Nick Cox is a 200-centimetre utility from the Knights. And there's an exquisitely named one. Here's one for you, Caro. Denver Granger Barras from Swan Districts is a key defender. Now, they could do easily what Port Adelaide were able to do in that super draft and get 3 kids there and rebuild their club. As the great philosopher Rachel Griffith said, it won't happen overnight, but it will happen. And if they get it right at this draft, they might be able to get a lot of salary cap back in their pocket. They might be able to pick up 3 ripping kids on the way through inside the top 10, which they haven't done since they probably recruited Lloyd.
I don't think, Ed, I don't think 3 brilliant young 17, 18, 19-year-olds are going to fix what sounds to me like a fairly toxic culture, I have to say, going on among the playing group. Yeah. And we've heard a lot of hubs have had these issues, but I think Essendon's has been one of the absolute worst. And, you know, as I said, brilliant 18-year-olds can't fix that.
If I was giving...
Port Adelaide was no good. Port Adelaide was no good.
They didn't have a toxic culture, Ed.
But around
they didn't
4,
ever
they
had a
got rid of a
toxic
few
culture.
people they thought.
None of
They
this talk
got
was
rid of a few
going on
blokes
around
they thought
5.
were toxic.
They were 4 wins, 1 loss.
Yep. But why?
And I think they certainly got injuries. And then when the losses mount... and then changes happen. There's no doubt there's some game plan issues, but...
What is their game plan? Can you tell me what it is?
Just watching, I think it's high surge handball. But for mine, the basis of competing wasn't there consistently. And I think that's led by their senior group. I would put Hurley in that. I would put Hooker to get fit in that. No captain their junior year. I think they had some real issues, but those guys need to stand up and drive the club forward. I think Merritt was the one out competing... and standards for mine.
Yeah, far from it for me. Ross has been the one that's been a coach. But I was Ben Rutten. I'd forget the X's and O's and the game. I'd spend the next 3 months. I don't think players can start training back till January now, next year. Yeah. Spend the next 3 months getting to know and building.
Can I make a comment on that?
Players. Yeah.
There's dynamics and mechanics. Yes. The mechanics are the X's and O's. But if you haven't got your dynamic right, you can have the best X's and O's. Fix the dynamic, which is team spirit, commitment, and forge ahead that way.
Nailed it in one sentence there. That's what Essendon need.
Yep, and that's why we think he'll coach again. Or at least,
not happening.
At least I do.
I reckon he's been put off.
Just like last one on
put
Essendon.
Up with this.
Last one on Essendon. I agree with almost everything Eddie said, and I'm sorry to go back to this, but they could have done this a year ago. They could have got a first-round pick for Fantasia, 2 first-round picks for Daniher, and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
No, I think that's flippant. I think as a club you've got a right to hang on to your players, turn them around, try and build the environment and have some success. OK, it hasn't worked, but I think if we're sitting here, it was different for Daniher, with saying, what a great decision. They had backbone, they fought, they turned him around.
Would you fight to keep Merritt if he asked to leave tomorrow with a year left on his contract?
Right now, no. I'd get 2 first-round picks from him and move on.
Would you?
Yep.
Not back
Given
in,
what's
that you
happening,
can turn things around.
Given what's happening.
But I think it's back to your point. Unless they fix, we don't know, but what we're being told and you're being told, no one knows Essendon better than you and Tim. Unless they fix the underlying problem, you can bring in whatever you like, it will continue on.